Greetings everyone, Unsafe Kibble here. Today I've got a little bit of a different video for you. It is a series we're putting together called Should I Challenge Run X with Code Vein. I hope that you enjoy. The idea for this series arose out of the Champions Respite Discord server. Previously was Company of Champions. They do a variety of challenge runs and support various games. If that's something that interests you, be sure to come over and join us. Code Vein is an ARPG deeply inspired by the Dark Souls series and the God Eater series. To call the aesthetic of the game anime would be an understatement. The game is a playable anime, both in its themes that emerge, the animated cutscenes, and the gameplay. Set in a post-apocalyptic world, Code Vein follows the player protagonist throughout a sealed-off city. Along the way, the player meets revenants, humans, and lost. Revenants are vampire-esque creatures, although these vampires are more night-trapped than traditional vampires. They do not suck blood directly with their mouths, but through devices known as blood veils or through the consumption of blood beads. If a revenant is not able to acquire enough blood, they lose themselves, their sanity, and become rabid creatures akin to Hollows in Dark Souls. On the player's journey, the player meets other revenants who will join them and participate with them in combat as they try to uncover what is occurring in the world, what happened in the past, and try to right it in the present. Thus far, I've been talking a lot about the general aesthetic of the game, and now we're going to move on to the question of whether or not you should challenge run this game. The answer is yes, and I'm going to argue that there are 3 reasons why you should challenge run Code Vein. In terms of aesthetics and storytelling, Code Vein is very unique and different from other Souls-like games. However, in terms of gameplay mechanics, it develops those same ideas. We're going to have iframes with dodges, we're going to have blocking, we're going to have parrying, and all of that gives Code Vein's combat a familiar feel for those who are used to Souls games and Souls-like games. This familiar feel extends to the level designs where people move through levels to approach a boss, and world design where you're moving through various interconnected areas, albeit fairly linearly in Code Vein because of the narrative devices employed. This familiarity allows the player to not have to relearn everything, and instead they're able to develop and build on what's new there that Code Vein has to offer. Code Vein is not flawless because you get the bugs. And if you have ever played Code Vein, you certainly will be familiar with bugs being present. Whether it's a boss's AI being disabled, whether it is the netcode, whether it is a glitch with a hitbox that seems rather unfair. Nonetheless, these qualities don't really destroy the challenge playability of the game. Overall, it's fairly well designed. The second reason that you should challenge run Code Vein is the build variety, and it is here that the game really starts to shine and distinguish itself. The builds of Code Vein center around blood codes and blood veils. Now, I'm not going to get into how you utilize blood codes, vestiges to unlock skills within those blood codes, and the like. If you're watching this, I'm assuming that you are basically aware of this in the game, and are either going to spend time learning how to do it yourself, or you know how to do it. Instead, I'd like to focus and highlight what Code Vein provides to low-level builds in the terms of variety, and how it's better than any other Souls-like. In an SL1 run, or Soul Level 1 run of Dark Souls, your stats are determined and what weapons you can use are locked behind these stats. Dark Souls 2's innovation is that it provides greater build variety than any other Soulsborne by giving you rings and gear that boost stats. Different combinations of these lead to a variety of offensive options in DS2 that simply aren't present in other Souls games. Code Vein improves this further. In Code Vein, Leveling raises your character's HP, stamina, and damage scaling, offensive and defensive. Levels do not impact other stats such as strength, mind, and vitality. Instead, those come from blood codes, and each blood code provides a player with their carry capacity, their base and max ichor, which is kind of your mana, and their stats, such as that strength and mind, which will range from D to S+. In other words, any gear option is available to the player at level 1, Haze level 1, in Code Vein. Want to wield the magic at level 1? That's possible. You want to use the big damage hammer? That's possible. Want to be that nimble short sword user? That's possible. No gear, no veil, no weapon is off limits. Instead, the player must experiment with a variety of blood codes and veils and weapons to see what actually works. Now, this already is a ton of flexibility, and it would be worthy of praise, but Code Vein takes it even further in terms of variety. Each blood code provides the player with gifts. Gifts are skills, spells, stat augmentations, and the like. Each gift is going to have a stat requirement and ichor, which the blood code must meet. Once you unlock a skill with Haze and have mastered it, you can use those gifts that were from one blood code and take them to any other blood code, provided you A, meet the stat requirement, and B, that it's not one of those unique gifts to that blood code, and there are a couple of those. So, in addition to the blood veils and the weapons, we're going to be mixing and matching gifts to create even wider build variety. In Dark Souls, there is a fairly standard strategy and path to doing a level 1. In Code Vein, that's simply not the case. Every build can be viable, and that's not present in any other Soulsborne. So the ability for you to find your own way is something that is really appealing to certain groups of people when they're looking at whether or not they should challenge run a game, and Code Vein has that. When you've challenge run a game a couple of times, one of the things you often like doing is you like making the game harder. So you want to add more challenge to the game. And that is absolutely possible in Code Vein for a variety of reasons. The first reason is that it does employ new game cycles similar to Soulsborne game. So you go from new game 0 to new game +1, new game +2. The amazing thing about Code Vein is that they make this scaling optional. When you complete the game, you don't necessarily have to go to New Game Plus. You can replay New Game again at the same difficulty. Another wrinkle is that, similar to Bloodborne's Chalice dungeons, Code Vein has depths. The depths are optional areas where you can explore and fight more difficult challenges. With the Code Vein DLCs, which admittedly were a bit disappointing, you do get 3 new optional bosses to fight. And these bosses, again, have challenges specifically associated with them, such as parrying one of their attacks, and they scale from 0 to 10, with 10 being akin to the max difficulty possible in the game. If you're someone who doesn't want the difficulty to scale in new game cycles and you want to simply replay the game at the same difficulty, you can still scale the difficulty by removing specific in-game mechanics. The most obvious is going to be the companion. In Code Vein, bosses are designed for AI companions to exist, and removing them changes many, many things. Because the computer assumes that you have an AI companion, they are able to switch targets much more rapidly and attack faster than they normally would be designed to do, because they assume someone is helping you in co-op. Now, if you bring in an extra co-opper, that will also boost the scaling of the HP on the boss. So overall, Code Vein really has tons of variety and scaling, which can be added into the game to make it even more difficult. So what are you going to gain from challenge running Code Vein? Well, obviously, you're going to gain a better understanding of the mechanics of bosses. You're going to gain greater knowledge of how certain aspects of the game function, because you're not depending on that extra damage that comes from the scaling. Overall, Code Vein is really worth a try as a challenge run. If you have enjoyed this video, thank you very much. We will have more coming from you. If you have a game you would like to recommend to us, go ahead and do that in the comments. And thank you for watching.